common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And now let's go to Victoria Coates, former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump. Victoria, what is President Biden doing? He's saying, okay, here's where you can hit and here's where you can't hit Iran, to Israel. The message is, okay, the oil fields are okay, but Iran, don't worry, we're not going to hit your nuclear facilities. How, undermining is that?
No, it's ridiculous, and it would be much better to say nothing. I'm sure you guys all saw today the president came out and sort of mused publicly that we might be talking to the Israelis about hitting oil facilities in Iran, but he really didn't favor the plan. It was incoherent, but that's what I took away from it. And, of course, oil markets went crazy to hear the commander-in-chief of the United States say this publicly. And I don't care what they're discussing with the Israelis. You don't go and tell the press. Unless you've made a decision, you've got all your ducks in a row, and you're prepared for the kind of impact this will have on our private industry, on my guys in Pennsylvania, for example. So I think it's outrageous. He seems to think a communique from the G7 is going to somehow change this situation when it didn't, when the last time they did it in April. And I think he should just let the Israelis be, ask them what they need, provide it, and be quiet.
Yeah, you know what? The other day he came out and he said, when he was asked about what do you think Israel should do, and they're planning on hitting this, and he said, ceasefire now, don't. I mean, he actually sounded more angry at Israel than he sounded at Iran and Hezbollah.
No, that's been the case all along. That Israel is the one that has to somehow accommodate Iran and the Hezbollah and the Houthi and Hamas, and that they are going to be held to a higher standard. They don't have any rights to do anything but self-defense. You listen to their language. The language out of the administration, first and foremost from the vice president, is Israel has a right to defend itself. Well, that's fine. You could defend all day, but the best defense is a good offense. And I think that's what Prime Minister Netanyahu came away from his meetings in Washington and Mar-a-Lago at the end of July, that he needs to do what he needs to do, that the Harris people will not have his back if they win in November, and that President Trump will. But the key thing is for him to get as much as he can done in the interim. And I just don't think he's listening to them anymore.
Yeah, he's just blocking it out. Ed Cox.
Victoria, as one of the preeminent foreign policy experts over time, Secretary Gates said about Biden, he's been wrong on every major policy issue for the last 50 years. Well, maybe if he says don't, what you should mean is do.
Maybe that's the whole thing. Maybe do the reverse.
Do the reverse.
So, Ed, I have a question.
Opposite.
Yeah, go ahead, Gov.
Oh, Ed, I have a question for you. If he's been wrong for the last 40 years, that takes us back to 1974. What was he right about that year?
We can't think of it. Maybe Victoria knows.
He was wrong on the Vietnam War at that time, too.
Yes, exactly.
but he was young, and so we'll excuse that.
74 on, there's no excuse. Yeah. Right? Victoria, I mean, it is incredible. Just and let's not forget, he was the guy in the room on Osama bin Laden who said, "Don't go in." Remember that? He was the one. It's like every single major decision. And the thought of Kamala Harris, where is she in all? I mean, she didn't even show up for Netanyahu speaking. I mean, what does that say? She had a sorority event.
No, and I've always been really interested in that, is that Biden was the last person in the room with Obama, said don't do it, and Obama did it to his credit, which was, to the good of all of us. And then Harris was the last one in the room with Biden to make the decision on Afghanistan, and they made the wrong decision there. So we now have the two poor decision makers, the worst decision makers, who are currently in office trying to pass, one trying to pass the baton to the other. And I think from this week, the only thing we've learned is if there's any even worse thing, it's going to be Tim Wolf, who can't tell the truth about anything, even his travel schedule, and to have him in a senior position. What would he advise her to do? One can only imagine. So I think this is really, really dangerous. And all of your listeners need to look at these policy contrasts. Let's take the personalities out of it and just look at the results of these two presidencies and ask themselves, what do they want over the next 4 years?
Yeah. And do you want the world in chaos, as it certainly seems on so many levels? Victoria, thank you so much.
Janine Pirro here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history. Physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Pirro for your free Janine Pirro Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit or call 800-965-8004. 800-965-8004 now to receive a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.